give them reparations, deduct pay for the labor that slaves performed to charities for minorities. Their wealth will go on, and the books will be balanced. And then finally, they say, give them land to build cult compounds, shaking my head. So there's a lot there. I think what they're saying is essentially they don't want to give money to individuals as far as reparations go. Maybe take the money that they would give to those individuals and apply it towards community benefits. Maybe fixing up impoverished sections of cities, that sort of thing. What's your feeling on that?
Well, I think that's a nice gesture, but I don't think that's for them to say. For what Black people should do with the money, or what they want us to do with the money. I do. What do I think we should personally do? I do personally think we should funnel our money within ourselves, not immediately go out here and start buying up things like crazy and doing all kinds of stupid stuff with our money. I think we should strategically use our money to build up a foundation, in an economic system, which in the case where we actually keeping our money circulating and start building up small things and everything, and able to compete with other large corporations within our community, so we won't have to. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask real quick. What do you do about either African Americans here that didn't or aren't descendants of slaves, and white lineages that didn't own slaves or fought to free slaves, whether it be worked on the Underground Railroad? What do you do about those people, and how do you go about separating who's going to pay and who doesn't?
Again, that's something that's going to come out of taxpayers' money. And again, we taxpayers have been paying reparations to people for decades that their ancestors had nothing to do with their wrongdoings. Again, none of my ancestors are German, but we pay every year. We pay the Jews every year. Everybody in my family pays the Jews every year. But we had nothing to do with putting them in gas chambers at all. So this is a problem for the government to figure out. But again, they have no issues dipping into government funds for everything else, but it's except for to give us reparations. So that's just something people is going to have to deal with.
Okay. Ryan Wall did not leave a message. Thank you for the super chat. The ex-Hindu atheist, please ignore my last super chat. I came in late and made an assumption. Whoops. So I read it already. And then the ex-Hindu atheist said, ignore all of my super chats, please. Well, sorry about that.
A little too late.
Particle Man. Let me see. Particle Man says, JF can volunteer to move back to Texas and work outdoors for the state, performing manual labor, then praise the slavery benefits.
If I was living in Africa and I was forced to be a slave in Texas, I would be happy about it. That would be an improvement of my life. But since I'm a Quebecois and a free nation and a white person, it is not an advantage for me to move to Texas.
But you're a person who claims to love your culture, claims to want to preserve your culture, but yet you saying leaving your culture, having your culture stripped from you, your language and everything else will be an improvement. So I'm a little bit confused with that logic right there. So on one breath you're saying we should protect our culture by any means necessary. The next minute you're saying, no, I was totally stripped my culture and best be fine with that because that will be an improvement.
There goes the honeymoon.
The thing is that the slaves were taken from Africa in circumstances that we tend not to remind to people, whereby about a third of the population of every country in Africa back then were slaves. And so the culture that you would have preserved if you wanted to be an African nationalist back then would be a culture where local slaves would exist. In fact, the transatlantic slave trade is evaluated to be only about 5% of the slave trade worldwide back in the days. And so it was only a part of it. And yes, we were depriving people of a certain culture, but let's not live under the impression that we were depriving them of a culture where they would be free. They would have been enslaved in Africa.
that's not guaranteed, but I still don't see how you would say that this. Well, I can see how you would say it because you're on the outside looking in. But no, absolutely not. I don't agree with that at all. Like to sit up here and say you in a better spot here, and you're looking at hindsight and you're looking how this country is now compared to how Africa is right now. That's just disingenuous. Again, you got that flag back there waving around in your background. I don't have no African flag I can wave in my background because I don't know which country my ancestors derived from. So it's real easy for you to say with your French flag back there, knowing your ancestors came from France, knowing your language, knowing your culture and everything else, to say, they should be fine just getting rid of all their culture because they're in such a better position here than Africa is right now and everything else. Well, you know what we had to do to get in the spot that we're in now, which ain't the best spot in the world, by the way, because we are the most impoverished people in this country per capita. It's not even close. So I'm a little, again, perplexed.
But my point is, yeah, I understand that you don't know which flag to identify to in Africa. I'm telling you, if you knew, you would be the one wearing this flag here, and you would be the proponent of slavery because your country has done slavery. All of the countries of Africa has been engaged in slavery, and if you were to wave that flag proudly, it wouldn't be with a slavery-free society, as I can do with the flag of Quebec, because your society would have been it would have been flooded of slavery through the centuries.
Yeah, but slavery is not going on right now.
Yeah, right now those societies seems to have evolved toward non-slavery, and I would say it's probably a consequence of the existence of white people.
That you can't really back that up, but okay.
I do think that the advancements of civil rights by Europeans and Americans have been leading this world forward in terms of human rights, and have even been influencing Africa.
No, I can argue that the slave revolts is what actually did it. I can argue that it's the slave revolts. I could argue that the slave revolt in Haiti in particular is what was a very key factor into how people view slavery today, because they saw the backlash of what can happen. They saw how a whole island could get taken over, and how they saw the errors in their ways. Because after Haiti, slavery dropped off tremendously. People all of a sudden the whole slave trade had to take they had to restructure how they did everything. They had to change shipping patterns and everything until they eventually stopped. Haiti had a lot to do with it. That's what had a lot to do with it. It wasn't because white people had some epiphany that this is a bad thing. No, it became bad for business.
Jeff, you work with neuroscience, so this might be a good question to ask you. It seems like over the course of human, not evolution in terms of like the standard, but our evolution in terms of societies. If you go back to the early, BC era up until now, it seems like there is a slow trend towards the way that people are treated as a whole. Like, for example, the slaves that built the pyramids, stuff like that. People could essentially be working next to somebody. They fall over dead. They move the person out of the way, move on. It's no big deal. We slowly move across time up until where we are today. And each generation, it seems like, fights a sort of whoever's in the majority looking back and trying to pull someone else up instead of it not staying with that trend of, these people are less than we are, so we can enslave them. We can make them work until they drop dead, and then there'll be nothing, no qualms about it. We seem to be a little bit more sort of, empathetic or caring. What is that brings that on as a whole, I guess, for society as a whole?
I think we're definitely on the evolutionary path that you mentioned. And so as an evolutionary biologist, I ask myself, what could favor more and more empathic people who believe more and more that they are entitled to claim from the majority for equality? It's essentially, why did white societies converge towards socialism? And the answer is that we're farming socialism. As long as you have a small government rewarding a small number of people for being agents of the government, or for claiming certain civil rights, for claiming that they are part of an oppressed class that needs some form of reparation. We've been doing that for more than 100 years, and your government size will grow and grow with more victim claims, because essentially we have farmed into our societies people who feel entitled to the wealth of others, because we have not enforced proper boundaries between the properties of individuals, where we say, no, you don't have the right to steal money. In fact, today we say to young people, yeah, it's okay to steal money in the form of taxes and redistribute it according to needs. Now, this whole distribution of wealth according to needs, where does it come from evolutionarily? It probably comes from our childhood. I think that the leftist mind, the socialist mind, is a child mind, because the child is faced with lots of brothers and sisters, and essentially the resources must be distributed equally for everyone to be surviving, whereas the adult is in competition with others. He's trying to acquire wealth that other adults will not have. That is the foundation of capitalism, and it's a very adult behavior. It's not an adult that you would have in front of your child. Your child, you would be giving them something. The problem is that this behavior that was originally a family-based behavior, I think has evolved into a political preference, such that today we have children of all kinds claiming all sorts of oppression and claiming reparations in the form of taxes, preferential employment, and essentially stealing from the rich to give to the poor.
Okay. Oh, and by the way, just to clear something up in the chat, yes, Maggie Bryson did come on the show. Yes, there were workers that built the pyramids. For the most part, it was slave labor. That is not even controversial. So I don't know why there are people that saying that it wasn't slave labor. It definitely was slave labor.
I thought they had a lot of. I thought they actually had ordinary, like regular people working on the pyramids too.
They did too. Yeah,
they're like
they got the way Dr. Bryson was explaining. They got special lodging. They didn't have to do the difficult pieces of the pyramid. They were crap. Yeah. But as far as like the backbreaking stuff, like transferring the bricks and stuff like that from the quarries and all that, yeah, it was definitely slave labor. I should tell you that. Flamio says 9 facts about slavery they don't want you to know. Kent Hovind CPA, I'm half black from the waist down, so I sympathize. Oh man, Ryan Wall, holding our black votes hostage results in more conservative presidents with regressive anti-minority policies. I'd rather back the lesser of two evils. Sorry, not sorry.
I hate that argument. I hate the lesser of two evils argument. I don't subscribe to that. That's an argument we've been subscribing to for a long time. There was a point in time before the Civil Rights Bill, we thought the Republicans were the lesser of two evils. Because we was traditionally conservative before the Civil Rights Bill. And then when the Civil Rights Bill got signed, we all flipped and we all turned liberal, right? And we did that because we was under the guise that the liberals actually had our backs, just like we was under the guise that the conservatives had our back. The reason why we were so conservative is because Abraham Lincoln was actually a conservative. So therefore, being that we had the illusion that he was freeing the slaves out the kindness of his heart, that we all aligned ourselves with the conservative party, and we voted faithfully conservative for the next 100 years until the Civil Rights Bill. And then we flipped, and even when Lyndon B. Johnson signed that bill, he was quoted as saying, after we sign this, we're going to have these niggers voting for us for the next 200 years. And so far, he's 1/4 right. He's 25% right, because that's what we've been doing since he signed that bill. And I feel like, me personally, I feel like the Democrats don't promise us nothing because they don't need to promise us anything, because they already know that at least 88% of us as a collective is going to run to those polls and vote for him every single election. So why should they promise us anything? They don't have to promise us anything. We got to get out of this whole lesser two evils mindset. That's why